Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm so excited for our very next guest. I have virtually in front of me, Jess Brown. She is a registered dietitian who specializes in eating disorders and sports nutrition, which is why I know you're going to love today's conversation because there's this big push for intuitive eating, but then we're also talking about like nutrition for performance and can those two things coexist? We're going to learn that from Jessica today. Jessica, welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Thanks so much for having me today, Tony. Excited to be here.
My pleasure. Super excited to have you. Jessica is also a podcast host, and I had the pleasure of being on her podcast, Fuel Her Awesome. So make sure you go check out her podcast, and we'll talk about all her other resources at the end. But before we get into that, Jess, I would love for you to just introduce yourself by sharing who you are, what you do, and most importantly, why you do what you do.
Okay, I love it. So as you said, I'm a dietitian. I specialize in sports nutrition and eating disorders. And a lot of my professional placement now is because of my story, right? And like where I was. And so I started as an athlete. I was one of those people that I love to move my body. I always have. There's people that love it and people that don't. And I was one of those ones that as soon as I turned 13 years old and I was allowed in the gym, my mom made me an appointment and got me in there. And it was really a big part of my identity in my younger years. Then my senior year of high school, I actually tore my ACL and I wasn't able to play. So I was planning to go on a scholarship to play at a school for soccer, and that all changed. And, I don't think I realized at the time how detrimental it was to me, but I had a lot of transitions going on. So I lost a huge part of my identity. I moved out of state. I went to a college where I didn't know anybody. And I'm sure you saw some of this, there's a lot of eating disorders in college. And so it was really the perfect storm in the sense that I developed major struggles with my body and food and developed an eating disorder. And quite honestly, didn't even know I had it. I just thought this is what I have to do to lose weight or not gain weight because I'm not an athlete anymore. So went through disordered eating, turned into an eating disorder. And fortunately, I was able to get support and get help and pull out of that. And that's a whole long story, but, pulled out of that. And then I decided to pursue a career in dietetics because in that season of my life, one of the things that really saved me was a dietitian. And I thought, this is a really cool career. I can tap into the nerdy science side of my brain, which I definitely have. And at the same time, it's in healthcare and serving people, but not so deep. I knew I didn't want to be a doctor. That wasn't a calling of mine. So decided to become a dietitian. And the deeper I dove into nutrition science, the more my relationship with food was healed. Because I just think it is so incredible how food is used in our body. It is just something that is so beautiful. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to eat certain foods and I wanted to fuel my body. And the more I trusted my body, I learned that it can handle things like, candy on Halloween. It can handle Thanksgiving, eating larger meals than normal because our metabolism is dynamic. So it was really healing. And I went on to work with eating disorders, and I sat there for a long time, treating specifically eating disorders and working in that field. Then over time, I kind of naturally just went back to the athletic world. I think it's my inner 16-year-old resurfaced. And I think it's Brene Brown says oh no, it's who's it? Shauna Nyquist. She says that part of being an adult is returning to your inner child. And
yes, definitely. Yes.
Yes. So that was where I landed, and I kind of got back into sports world. And what was really cool is pulling those two together for me personally, but then professionally, just found a lot of joy in it. So I think most people, we go into fields that we want to know more about because we struggle with it ourselves. And then by nature, we're just super passionate about serving other people. And this, where I'm at now with food and this whole journey is, I've completely recovered from my eating disorder. I believe in 100% recovery. I absolutely believe that. And now I'm at this place where I like to call it empowered eating, where we can, trust our body and have the intuitive element. And at the same time, we can eat in a way that fuels our body to take it to the next level, to have more energy, to maybe not age as quickly or age well, right? Like we can use this nutrition science to just be stronger humans.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was such an incredible story. And I know a lot of people can relate and find themselves in that story, whether they're a dietitian or not. I think we've all probably struggled. I think that the main thing that you said that I know a lot of people can resonate with is maybe the person who really does love movement and then they get, or did play sports in high school or, was very active, but then they get an injury or they get sick and they have to slow down. I know that happened to me and that was a big pivotal moment for me. But, looking back, it was like a blessing in disguise because it really helped me realize like we can't wrap our entire identity into, health and fitness because there's so much more to give. And then it becomes damaging to like believe that there's only one part of you that, is important, or you can only be important if you get all that you have all this part together and it looks like a very specific and certain way. And so, totally. I'm wondering, like, how did you work through that, like, identity shift? And I actually, before I have you answer that, I feel like it's hard for probably the listeners to hear because I do believe in when you're in the beginning stages of your journey, there is a part of you that does have to identify as this newer person that does value, their nutrition and their fitness in order to become that person, right? Mm-hmm. But then I feel like anything, we need to then realize, well, that's not all of you. It's part of you, but you do need to like commit to it. So it can be almost like a catch-22. I feel like even me talking about it out loud, it's like kind of confusing. So do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yes, I do. I totally do. The way I think of it is like seasons of life. We have different seasons. And one of my things I love to say is like what was healthy yesterday might not be healthy today and it might not be healthy tomorrow. So like when I think back to my early recovery days, a lot of what I had to do was give myself permission to eat, and so a lot of my wins that you could call them were things like eating a donut on a random Thursday or figuring out how to have like a sugar latte, like a pumpkin spice sugar latte and a cake pop and not freak out. And so there was a point in my life where the permission side was really, really important. And then after a period of time, it was like after I had kids, my first kid, I was so tired. I was like, I feel so crappy. And then I did like a little inventory of what I was eating. I was eating no fruits and vegetables. And so like, then I had to shift and kind of go, okay, now it's time to add in some more intentional eating. And, maybe I don't need the cake pop and the sugar pumpkin spice latte. So I do think like there's these seasons and they change and we have to like constantly do a reevaluation period of like, what is my goal right now? Because if we don't, you're right. It gets really confusing. It's like, what am I trying to get right now? And, I was trying to do something yesterday, but now I'm trying to be this new person. And it's very confusing, but I think that reevaluation process is so important.
Yeah. And also, I mean, that is part of the healing process. I think a lot of people want to skip over going from extreme restriction to balance. And I think our bodies, ironically, are naturally always trying to balance us out. So if you've done periods of extreme restriction for a really long time, then you're going to need to do periods of like extreme permission for a really long time. For sure. Until you can find that middle. But thank you so much for explaining that. Cause I think it really is part of the process and it's necessary in order for you to be able to get to that place where you can even set the intention and know that every season is different and being able to do that and follow through with it.
Totally. And I think you're right. Most people want to skip that because it's scary, right? Mm-hmm. To trust your body and trust that maybe your worst fear is not going to happen. And it might, like your body might change, but it's that whole trusting the process and backing off of diet culture and having identity wrapped up in what you look like, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that in itself could be a whole podcast, a whole podcast. Did you notice when you stopped exercising, did your body change shape? Because you were young then. So I'm curious if that was part of also, or was it more of like maybe body dysmorphia, thinking your body was changing shape?
I think it was definitely both. So I don't think it changed as much as it actually did, but it definitely changed. I mean, there was a clear shift on the scale. My weight went up and my body mass, I mean, I didn't measure my body fat, but knowing what happens, right? Like obviously it did change because I went from being a soccer player, which is expending a lot of energy. And I was an eater. I mean, I was like 8 Eggo waffles before I went out on the field. I remember having Snicker bars while I worked out and orange juice. And so I was a huge eater. And then all of a sudden not doing that, I had some of those habits that were still there. And then when I got into like the shame space, of course, that turned into like, don't eat this. And as you know, like you put the restriction thing on there, it leads to overeating and binging. So I definitely know my body changed, which was part of the struggle. And being in college, I don't think I had the like self-awareness or really the solid ground in my own identity to feel confident in my body despite the change, right? Like that shift was really hard for me.
Yeah. So what work did you do? Was it the work you did with your dietitian? Did you end up working with a therapist? Like, was it just stuff you did on your own? What were the things that really helped you, or even with you probably teach your clients to do, to like go from this place of feeling uncomfortable in your body to being confident in your body, regardless of what it looks like?
Oh yeah, a lot of work. I think it was many things that played into it. So one, I mean, I have a strong faith and that came back into my life and played a really strong role. I worked really closely with a therapist. The therapist was one that, and it wasn't like a light switch, but it was something that through work and continued discussion and like time, I was able to get to a place. And then I also had healthier relationships in my life. I mean, in college, I was in a relationship that was really mentally abusive. It wasn't healthy for me. And after I graduated, I actually ended up moving back home. And I met my husband, who I've been married to him 15 years now. And he is my better half. And he did have a very strong role in that shift. I'd like to say I did it all on my own, but I didn't. I definitely had wonderful people in my corner.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing. I think even as a dietitian, people think we'll have it all figured out, but no, the strongest, most successful people reach out for help. They get support. We're not meant to do this alone. We're not meant to do life alone. We're not to go through our problems alone. And your environment matters so much, who you communicate with on a regular basis, who you choose to be your partner. Like, it's a beautiful thing that you found someone that is understanding and supportive. And I know a lot of people might not be able to relate to that. Maybe maybe that person is still their partner, but you can then get help in other ways. You can listen to podcasts like this. You can join a support group. You can get a dietitian or working with a therapist, or, I think that's really important to know that like we need the support, we really do. Otherwise, It's going to take a long time, because there was a lot of times like eventually I finally got the help that I needed, but for so long I tried to figure it out alone. And I think like you and I realized like that's why we went into this field, because we want to really try to help people like condense time so they're not like spinning their wheels and feeling stuck for like ever. So okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about kind of this idea of, because it is a hard place to be, right? Where I think a lot of people, I don't know about you, but when they come to work with us, they want to know like, how do I feel my workout? Like, how do I get the most out of my workout? And unfortunately, we have to like take a step back, because we have to be like, okay, well, that's important, but it's not as important right now, right? So I think just to speed up this podcast right now, we could agree that like, that in the beginning, when you're healing your relationship with food, trying to fuel your workouts probably not like, I don't know. Do you think it's like, it's not the priority, but it's important. Priority. So let's skip. Let's say we have like now, maybe we're healing from disordered eating. So we're not still in the middle of an eating disorder. We're healing from disordered eating. We're starting to want to learn how to like fuel for our workouts. Is it possible to eat intuitively and to fuel your workouts simultaneously?
It's such a good question. And like most nutrition answers, like it depends, right? It's not a yes or no answer. So I think like, first of all, we have to define what intuitive is and how people identify with that word. So if intuitive to you means like, you totally go with the flow and there is no structure, no targets, then I would say no, I don't think it's possible, because generally what happens and what the research shows us is that when we push our body and we elevate our heart rate or we push it past that anaerobic threshold, our hunger hormones are then suppressed afterwards. So are you intuitively hungry after you push your body? No, not usually, right? It's something that actually, like, metabolically, there's a shift and we're not as hungry. Then on the flip side, there's like just some general sports nutrition things that come into play, that when we push our body, there's a 24-hour immunosuppressive effect. So we're more likely to get sick if we don't refuel our body. There's also a catabolic response where our body is breaking things down internally. And if we don't give it the tools to rebuild, that breakdown continues. So if that's how we define intuitively, I don't think it's totally possible. But again, like, you have to assess where you're at the journey and what's the priority, right? Like, is your body healthy? Can it handle that immunosuppressive effect? Or maybe are you in a place where we need to take your immune system into consideration and make sure it's in its best place? So I think there's a lot of like nuances in there that we have to consider. If intuitive to you means like eating more flexibly and being more in alignment with like what sounds good and what feels good in your body, then yes, I think we can do that. And so usually how I approach pre and post workout meals or snacks is a combination of targeted nutrition. So like, here's what the books say would be great. And let's couple that with your own biofeedback. Like, what does your body say when you eat this food before your workout? How's your workout? Do you like it more? Do you work out better? That, and that's where we pull in the intuitive piece.
Yeah, I love that so much. And to me, that's why I don't even really love using the word intuitive sometimes, because of the fact that it's also been coined as a specific term and it does have like a very specific definition. So where I like to kind of talk it as more like intentional eating, more mindful eating, because it really does help. That to me is the definition of balance. It's like, that's what makes it flexible. It's like understanding we want to feel good. We want to have energy. We want a healthy immune system, right? We want to prevent disease. And we probably also want our food to be fun and flavorful and taste good. Yeah. Like, so I really, really love that. So, I guess because you mentioned hunger. So before we go, maybe if we talk specific, I think that's a really good thing that you mentioned. Because I think our hunger can be a little bit out of whack, especially if we come from like years of dieting and all that. And then when we add exercise on top of it, I think some people might feel that when they exercise, they're ravenous. So I know what you meant. You meant right after, But I think then, like, if we wait if we are not fueling properly, then we end up like ravenous. And then maybe other people especially like, I know it's so funny. Like, I remember when I was training for my half marathon, on the days I was resting, I was starving. On my long run days, I was so tired I couldn't even think about food.
Right. See, that's confusing, right?
Right. So
if you're eating intuitively, and I see that with so many of my runners I work with, is they're like, I'm not hungry at all. And I'm like, yeah, but you just ran 18 miles. Like, you gotta eat. You gotta eat something. So I think that's where it gets really confusing. And we have to, I think it goes back to like assessing what the goal is, right? Like, if you're training for something like a half marathon, you have a training plan. And part of that training plan should probably be some nutrition, because we have to like incorporate that piece of the plan. Now, if you're at a different place in your journey and the goal is to just like go to the gym and learn how to have a better relationship with the gym, adding something like a pre and post workout stack and getting meticulous about the grams of carbs and protein probably isn't the best move for you at that point.
Right. And that's a really good point, actually, because I think there's a way in what we're saying, and then maybe I just need to say it again and say it in another way. Like, there actually is a way that you can incorporate pre and post workout fueling without having to track your macros, without having to count every calorie, right? That's exactly what we're saying. So we're not saying, just listen to your hunger whenever and all the time, but it's more so, you can use those parameters, right? Like we want to have, and maybe you can speak a little bit more to this, Jessica, like we want to have like carbs before our workout and carbs and protein after and like all of that stuff. But like, to get into the numbers might be more triggering and more problematic and really not helpful. So I guess going off of that, how do you help clients kind of get a clearer picture of what to eat without getting too specific?
Sure. So if they aren't wanting to see the numbers, because some clients I find like that's where we can start to rewrite the story we have around numbers, is like using it for a positive. But if they're still not there, what I do is I have like general guidelines. So I'm like, okay, before you work out, your workout is fueled by glucose. So let's give your body glucose and let's give it something that is easier to digest. If you're about 2 hours before the workout, so maybe you're a morning worker-outer. If you're a person who works out in the morning, it might not look the same as someone who works out at like 11 o'clock and has time to have a meal. So first we kind of gauge the time we have before, and then we look at quantity. And I definitely am a fan of using like fists to measure. So I'll say, okay, if you're 2+ hours out, I want you to have 1 to 2 fists of carbohydrates. And then we add the intuitive piece of like, what feels good? Is that a bagel? Is it oatmeal? Is it, toast and a banana? That's where we get to individualize it. If it's 2 hours or less, it might look like a lot smaller of a source of carbohydrate. Maybe it's a sports specific carbohydrate like Cliff Bar, Grupo Nutrition, Stinger bars, like all of those companies, they specialize in creating glucose and sucrose combos that are softer on the gut. So having something like that might be more beneficial. And then we don't even have to worry about numbers. It's like, right. Oh, you like Stinger wafers? Cool. Have a Stinger wafer and some water and you're on your way.
That's actually a really good point, to utilize those options as like to take the guesswork out for you and to not have to stress about, weighing and measuring. Sorry, there's a siren that was going by.
Oh, no worries.
I was like, should I mute myself as I'm talking? I don't know if people heard that or not.
No, I could hear it.
But yeah, so no, that's really, really helpful. Okay, cool. All right. I guess, and I feel like I've asked this question before when I've had other dietitians on who specialize in sports nutrition, but I don't think it hurts to hear again. And this might be, we have new listeners all the time and not everybody tunes into every single episode. So I guess like at what point does someone consider themselves an athlete or super active in a way to actually start caring about pre and post workout nutrition?
I love that. So my answer to that is based on, do you know who Dr. Stacy Sims is?
I don't think so.
She's great. Yeah, she's awesome. She studied. Yeah, she's great. She's got great resources. She's not a dietitian. She's a sports physiologist, and she specializes in nutrition though. So a lot of her research is out of Stanford University, and she looks at women in particular. But anyways, one of her mottos is, if you move your body on purpose, you are an athlete. And I think isn't that great? I love it too, because I think a lot of our diet culture stuff says like, if you're not performing at a certain level, you're not considered an athlete. No, if you get yourself to the gym and you elevate your heart rate and you push your body, you're an athlete. I don't care if that's walking. You're an athlete.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, and there's walking athletes. There's like, walking is a sport. You can make it,
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And we all know walking is fab. We love walking.
I know.
It's like my favorite exercise, just because it's so much more than, it's not even for the fact that, yes, it has all these physical benefits, but like mentally, without my walk, I don't know where I would be today. I do know where I would be. I would be very depressed. Like walking is so important. I love it for your mental health. It's like one of my favorite things.
Totally. And then even looking at it from like an able-bodied standpoint, like not everybody can do that. So why would we? Yeah, it's totally an athletic move.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So basically anyone should be paying attention to this. All right. So I guess for what would you say, are there phases and stages of kind of going from maybe feeling out of control around food, coming from an eating disorder or disordered eating, to, making peace with food in your body, and like having that flexible but targeted nutrition approach? Like, what would you say the steps are from A to Z?
So I would say like the first question you have to ask and look at is like your relationship with movement, and what is it that you're getting out of movement? And if you're at the point where you're still trying to rewrite that relationship, because it is a tricky relationship, right? It's so closely tied to a lot of times weight loss, sometimes identity. There can be a lot of disordered thinking in exercise, whether you've had an eating disorder or not, right? I think there's some unhealthy attachment that can come to that. If that's where you're at, I mean, first and foremost is we've got to work on that relationship. And that's going to look different for each individual. From there, if you're in a place where you do enjoy your moving your body, like I can tell you, Tony, I work out in the morning. I do CrossFit. I totally drank that juice and love it.
You drink the Kool-Aid.
I drank the Kool-Aid. I talked against it for so long, or I spoke against it for so long, and I love it. But I work out at 5:30 in the morning, and I love that hour. Like I genuinely get up excited to go. It has nothing to do with, what I look like. It's fun for me. It's social. I mean, I can climb a rope now. I couldn't do that in elementary school.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. I just got so sad. I just remembered me trying to climb a rope in elementary school and being the bigger kid and everybody yeah.
It's healing.
God.
You should try to climb a rope now.
I need to do that. I'm just I'm really going back to that phrase of being your inner child again. That's two things I need to do. I'm putting it on the podcast. You guys have to hold me accountable. I need to learn to climb a rope, and I have to go skiing because I will never forget. I was 16. And we went on this ski trip I was part of the youth group of my church. We went on the ski trip, and for whatever, and I always, even at that, I was always the bigger girl, right? So even the ski trip, it was like, church youth group, guys, it was all about like who's hooking up with who. It was just boy girl group, you feel like whatever. And it was like I never had any options because I was always like, the big girl, no one cared, whatever.
Yeah. So
I was already carrying that with me on the ski trip, right? And then when it came to I've never skied before, and I was an athlete, but I was good at basketball and softball and volleyball and track and field. I've never done a water sport. I've never done snow or whatever. Anyways, wasn't good at it, and I blamed my weight. Just like that was my story for so long. I always blame my weight. I blame my weight for why the boys didn't like me back. I blame my weight for, why I wasn't on varsity at a younger age. I blame my weight because I didn't know how to ski, and now you just made me realize I do need to go back and just prove that I can, whether I can or can't do it has nothing to do with my weight. But I know that I'm going to be able to learn how to do it because it was my mind that was blocking me from learning because I just decided that I wasn't able to because I was in a bigger body. And that was you just healed me, Jess.
I'm just so excited.
You just helped me realize something.
Breakthrough. I love it. I can't wait to hear. I cannot wait to hear about your rope climbing. And I want to see it.
Where do I go? How do I learn? Where do I go for that? I'm not.
Well,
I could do CrossFit, but I don't.
Do CrossFit.
I don't know. It's funny. There used to be one across the street, but it's not there anymore.
You could probably go to any elementary school.
Oh yeah.
Do they have them anymore? It might be a liability now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or
you know what? I wonder at the park. It's not a whole rope, but they have with the I don't even know if they have that seat on the rope thing.
Yes.
I think if I can go, I might be too tall though.
There's got to be a ropes course too. I mean, if there's a ropes course. Yeah. Okay. I can't wait to hear it.
Where are you from again, by the way?
I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's a great place. We have some great community here, specifically around the fitness world. There's great runner clubs, biking clubs, CrossFit clubs.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a great place to be. But so anyways, this moment you I love it.
Totally just segued and sideways.
Love it. Yeah. But I can relate to it because that's a lot of what I felt returning to CrossFit. It's and the other one for me. So for me, it was the pull-up. I was the one in gym class that couldn't do a pull-up and everyone made fun of me. I was the weak one, and I was always the small one. So while my struggle when I was little wasn't necessarily excess weight, it was I was the pipsqueak. I was the teeny tiny one that didn't have, a little mouse voice. I wasn't,
right.
I didn't have a presence. So when I got my pull-up, it's on video.
Oh, yeah.
Usually, so I relate, and I can't wait to hear about your rope.
Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, the pull-up. I'm not sure that would be something. It's one of those things. It's could I train for a marathon? Yeah, I could try, but
I don't want to. Better not.
Not at all. Maybe after I climb the rope and do the, go skiing, my confidence will increase. Then I'll go for the pull-up.
Well, then you'll have your inner child release. Like, who knows what she'll do?
Yeah, it's wild child.
Oh, I love it. So going back to your question.
Sorry, we're progression. So we're healing the exercise, relationship with exercise. If you're in this place, go ahead. Yeah, if you're in this place where you look forward to moving your body, it's something that's healing. Maybe you're enjoying it. Now we can look at how can I use my fuel to get more out of this? And, some people might not want to, and that's totally their prerogative. They might just enjoy going and hanging out at the gym. And that's just that. But then I do think we naturally get to this point, just being humans, always looking to better ourselves. It's like, how could I get more? How can I have more energy when I exercise? And so I think if that's where you're at, adding in targeted nutrition around your workout is a great place, or that's a great place to start adding it in. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Oh, this has been so good, Jess. Is there anything else you want to add or share before we talk about where people can find you? But anything else on your heart, on your mind? Well,
right now I'm just thinking about you climbing a rope, Tony.
I got to find one. I'm going to literally Google when we hop off. I'm literally going to Google rope. I'm going to do it right now. Rope course near me. I'm in New York, so there's got to be something.
There's got to be something.
There's literally an urban air adventure park. Where are you? In Wesley Street. Where? Oh, in New Jersey. This looks really fun.
Have you ever been to one of those?
No. Have you?
Yes, they are so fun.
The first picture is a child. It's not for adults. Oh my God. Trampoline and adventure park.
Mm-hmm.
How fun. I'm close. Oh my God. How fun is this? Sign the waiver. Oh God, I'm going to die.
Done.
Oh my God. Amazing. Oh my God, this is exciting. I will let you know if I do it. There's a warrior course, climbing walls, climbing hills, trampolines, indoor playground. It's a good thing I have a stepdaughter.
I know. You can go by yourself. There is no judgment
here. Might be better if I had a reason, No, but that's amazing. Okay, cool. All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, I just think, you should love the movement you do. You should love what you're doing with your body. And when you get to that place, adding in some nutrition around that, some intentional targeted nutrition can help you love it even more.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Amazing. Jess, thank you so much for being here. This is absolutely great. Where can people find you, connect with you, follow up, and ask any other questions they might have?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram at Jess Brown RD. And then like you mentioned before, I host a podcast as well. It's called Fuel Her Awesome, which you were on just a few weeks ago and loved that. And then all my resources are on my website at jessbrownrd.com.
Amazing. All right, guys, make sure you go give her a follow. If you're not subscribed to the Tips with Tony podcast, definitely hit that subscribe button. A new episode comes out every Tuesday and Thursday. If you like the episode, take a screenshot of it, share it on your story, tag me at tips_with_Tony. That's Tony with an I. And also make sure you tag Jessica. I'll put all of her links in the show notes. Jess, thank you so much for being here. For those listening, thank you so much for listening. As always, this is Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.